Hi there, and welcome to this new podcast. And with me today is Anuj Ashar, and we're going to discuss in this podcast about commercializing artificial intelligence, which probably one of the biggest hot topics in business now, and no doubt into the future about artificial intelligence. We've all heard of ChatGPT and all the interesting elements that it's raising up. So Anuj was named recently as one of the top 3 global young innovators and also UK Leicestershire Live University Innovation winner. And Anuj Ashar is a serial decorated tech entrepreneur and currently the CEO of the artificial intelligence startup Beta Booster. His experience ranges from launching fintech companies, working with Innovate UK and the United Nations to build worldwide sustainable businesses, and has also spent some time in venture capital. In 2022, Anuj graduated with first-class honours in aerospace engineering from the University of Leicester and currently sits on the Leicestershire Local Economic Partnership Youth Advisory Board, where he uses his passion for technology to support more growing businesses and young entrepreneurs. Anuj, you've achieved so much in such a short space of time. You're young, so I mean that's amazing stuff.
No, thank you so much. I mean, I started my first company in my first year at university, and it kind of just exploded from there.
Mhm. Yeah, it's I'm just astonished by all the things you've achieved and done in such a short space of time. So thanks for joining me. I really appreciate this, and it's a pleasure to have you on that part of the podcast series. And I'm sure people will be looking forward to hearing from you.
No, I mean, thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to it.
Good. Well, I mean, the topic of this podcast is about commercializing artificial intelligence. So my first question really is, what are the key developments in AI for entrepreneurs and business?
Yeah, it's a great question. But to first kind of like address that, I think it would be really good to talk about what artificial intelligence actually is. Um, and essentially, it is an algorithm or a system that mimics human behavior using data.
Mhm.
And the more data it has, the better it becomes. So artificial intelligence has been around essentially forever, but it's only really come to light recently.
Mhm.
I think the one that everyone knows about is autopilot.
Mhm.
So if you're on a plane, normally there's no pilot flying it most of the time, and that's been there for decades.
That's a
Everyone knows about
great
autopilot.
example. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows about autopilot, but no one knows it's actually artificial intelligence. So how that works is the plane has various number of sensors and parameters, and using conditions, it can adjust its winglets to be able to fly in certain directions.
Mhm.
And that's essentially what artificial intelligence is as a whole. And how we've kind of developed that recently is into so many different branches, but all sticking to that main principle of taking in data and being able to produce human-like outputs.
Mhm.
So I think a few examples of that could be, well, one that we use at Beta Booster is natural language processing. So the ability to actually perform as if a human would by taking in different inputs. So natural language processing, like we mentioned at the start, ChatGPT is massive at the moment. And what that is NLP. So based on a few different inputs, a system will assess what has been said and respond to it as if it were a human,
Mhm.
but with a much higher level of intelligence. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many different applications that are under development still. I think more recently there's been an emphasis on art. So putting in a few keywords, and this whole system will produce artwork that mimics exactly what you're asking it for.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there's so many different applications that are being done, and I could sit here for hours and just talk about the different ones, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the key developments are still under development, I guess, and AI is only getting better with the more data that we receive.
So, I mean, how does a business like access AI? Because I think that's probably the biggest mystery to most entrepreneurs and most business people is how do I get access to it?
Yes, so there's loads of different types of AI, and it kind of depends on what the business is doing or what the use case will be.
Hmm.
So for us at Beta Booster, what we're doing are two different things. The first one is we're using APIs which plug directly into our software.
Yep.
And what that is like a license to be able to use things like ChatGPT. We're able to use GPT because we pay a sort of monthly fee and just plug it into our system. But the other thing that we're doing is creating artificial intelligence from scratch. So we're working with leading university researchers and PhD experts to actually look at the different applications that we need.
Hmm.
So at Beta Booster, what we do is take in technical requirements from non-technical clients. And the system will use non-technical responses to automatically produce a brief by saying the client needs X work because of X inputs.
Mm.
This doesn't exist anywhere. So when we first started it, it was like, well, what do we do?
Mm.
And based on that, I thought, okay, we need to create this from scratch. So what
You
does
know
that look
what?
like?
I mean, I find that so interesting because, you know, how many industries are there where the language is impenetrable? And I'm thinking of solicitors, lawyers, legal matters, accountants, when it's not easy for the average person to understand all the complex terminology. And it's like some industries have a language of their own. I mean, funnily enough, one of my previous guests, Ken Valady, he's released a book called The Startup Lexicon, where it's actually a book that helps corporate managers understand what the words that entrepreneurs use, what they mean, you know, and vice versa, and also for entrepreneurs to understand corporate terminology that they wouldn't otherwise have encountered. And yeah, it's a fascinating point that you're making, that you're using this artificial intelligence, you can better communicate to the client and to the customer.
Absolutely. I mean, when first starting Beta Booster, we wanted to target building technology at SMEs and non-technical clients.
Mm.
So people that didn't know what they didn't know.
Mm.
And we had to design a system that could understand exactly what they're putting in, ask certain questions, and then produce an output that developers could understand.
Mm.
So it's about taking one sort of input, going through a whole system to translate that into a technical requirements, and then sending that out to people who can understand it and know what to do with it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're moving quite nicely here towards my second question, which was going to be about some of what do you see as some of the commercial applications of AI? And you've obviously used some really nice examples already. I was wondering, do you have any other thoughts on commercial applications of AI?
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways that can be used. So either it's internally, so how you demonstrate your own processes as a company,
Mm.
which is what we're doing, by the way, again. So we're taking in those requirements and we're building a technical specification, which the client ultimately doesn't see.
Mm.
But there are also the external elements, so client-facing sides, and that could include things like chatbots. Chatbots is
Bots.
chatbots.
Yeah, chatbots. Yeah, I know. I know what you mean. Yeah, no,
Chatbots is
exactly. Yeah, I was thinking, you know, how chatbots are increasingly being used as almost like an intermediary between the customer and customer service staff.
yeah.
So it's almost like they are the first line that you deal with. You deal with a chatbot before you get through to a human being, for instance. So it's a very interesting. I mean, I wonder how people respond to that. I mean, sometimes I know I'm talking to a chatbot, but it just feels so realistic that you kind of forget. The only thing that tells me it's a chatbot is that the reply is instant, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, I think chatbots have still got a long way to go before they feel fully natural, but I
Mm.
don't know if that's a biased point of view because you can kind of tell what an artificial response is. Um, But I think chatbots at the moment have taken over a lot of that human element that companies were spending a lot of money on.
Mm.
And being able to give clients instant, rapid responses that are directly correlated to their query is just so powerful at the moment.
Mm.
Um, but in terms of other commercial uses, I mean, it's kind of like a tree, artificial intelligence, because things just branch out of each other.
Mm.
So again, I'm going to link back to ChatGPT, but I know a lot of people who are actually using it for their work.
Mm.
Um, and that's actually become a problem for universities where
Yes.
lecturers are reading over work and they don't know who's written it if it's
Yeah.
been done by a
There was
chatbot.
I heard something recently. I may be wrong about this, but this is what I was told, that ChatGPT created a CV application that got itself into Harvard Business School. So it's
Yeah.
quite fascinating. But actually, your point there about people using it for work. So, for instance, I have a friend, and he shall remain anonymous, but I have a friend that to be, one of the problems since the pandemic has been email overload. We are getting bucket loads of emails on a daily basis, and he actually uses chat GPT to construct replies. So he will put the email into chat GPT and said, create a polite reply to Mr. X, and it will then read you paste in the email, it reads it, and it constructs a response, and boom, done. You copy and paste, and you're out of here. I was just thinking of the sheer amount of time saving for businesses. I mean, the amount of time we lose dealing with the volume of emails is quite astonishing. And yeah, that's quite a fascinating thing, especially if you've got like an artificial intelligence that is built into your business, and it knows your business, so it knows what to give as a reply.
Absolutely. And I mean, going back to things like that, people can input code. The system can actually identify where there's issues with code. So developers can do instant fixes. They're not sitting
Yeah.
there waiting for hours and hours just trying to find problems. But with that being said, there are a few issues with it. So, but I don't mean that as a bad thing. Um, Once we link back to university students again, I know people who are using it for dissertations or doing it for
Wow.
coursework,
Mm.
but that actually leads to more opportunities in artificial intelligence detection. So there could be commercial uses in actually being able to detect artificial intelligence.
Mm.
And you'll get two sides. You'll get the student who's using it to do the work, but you'll have a corporation which is using it to check it.
Yeah.
So again, it becomes a battle of artificial intelligence and even more commercial
Yeah.
opportunities.
I mean, it's a big issue because I mean, let's just take universities as an example. There is such a thing as contract cheating, where people hire somebody to write their work for them.
Yes.
This is very hard to detect. I mean, it's possible the human can do it when you realize certain anomalies that don't make sense. But when it's written by an AI, it's different. But I think the interesting thing there is, we run things through plagiarism checks, for instance, but how do we run something that's artificially intelligent and has probably been programmed not to plagiarize? It's exactly the point. I mean, then you extend that to businesses. Okay, so, consultancy, do you ask can you use the AI to construct a set of options for a client? I mean, it's just the potential applications are so broad.
Exactly. And I mean, I guess it links back to what it actually is again, and it's mimicking human behavior.
Mm.
So artificial intelligence just takes in data to be able to act as if it were a human.
Mm.
And the question is, how do you detect that when it's not meant to mimic it, when it's actually meant to be a human on the other end?
Yeah,
And I guess
yeah.
that's a massive opportunity.
One of the works that I published with some colleagues from the US and from Colombia in a couple of years ago now is we did a test to see if a machine learning algorithm could replicate a human being's literature review. So, given if you for those of you listening, you'll have to indulge me for a little bit, but very popular now is systematic literature reviews. And normally what happens is, there are thousands and thousands of academic papers out there, news reports, everything. So we apply a set of criteria, filter it down, and we usually end up with less than 100 papers that we then build a structured literature review around. Now, you can clearly tell there are potential flaws there, because how representative, actually not accurate, but how representative is that set of studies? Because the human being can only process so much information, but the machine learning can process tons of information. And what we actually discovered is, there's a human behind it that's having to inform the machine of, okay, here's the papers that I want you to read, here's the content, go through them. And then you have to kind of like refine and improve its interpretation. So there's still like a human element. But what we found is that it could replicate what a human did, but it wasn't in any way superior. So our conclusion was, the paper was called, will machine learning terminate human lit reviews? By the way, I'm a fan of the Terminator film. And the answer would be no, but I would imagine, and that was machine learning. So as it moves towards artificial intelligence, which is programmed to think like a human, I think it's going to become very interesting, how it develops.
I mean, I absolutely agree. I think there's just so many different applications at the moment that are being developed. And as data becomes more available, we're only going to see AI getting stronger.
Yeah. Well, let me move on to my third question then, which is, in what ways might entrepreneurs and businesses go about commercializing AI? Because I imagine that's probably the biggest scary factor, so to speak, for most business people and entrepreneurs. Is just, I don't know much about AI. I don't know how it works. So how can we go about commercializing it, do you think?
Yeah, I guess it goes again back down to what the core principles of any business are, and that's to solve a problem where enough people would be willing to pay for a solution. And with artificial intelligence, it's again taking in data to produce very accurate outputs. So I'm going to speak in quite broad terms here, but if there are issues that enough people have, and it needs a very high-end solution, then that can be commercialized. So to narrow down a little bit, one of the key things I think is going to be very important for AI is medicine, and actually very rapid healthcare detection. So I was in A&E the other day, not for myself, by the way, luckily.
Yeah.
I was speaking to one of the consultants there. And what he told me was they're now trialing out a system that can detect the exact problems with a patient. So they'll go under one scanner, so the AI is linked to some hardware, and it will be able to say, this is the issue, what we think it is, this is what the best course of action would be, and this is how to ultimately save this person's life. Wow. And I think AI is going to have so many different implications like that, where there's so many different inputs that can be done and so many different outputs to kind of give a very accurate response.
And what I'm hoping is that AI can support consultants, support doctors, and to make a more rapid decision. I mean, in myself, funny enough, I went to A&E in October last year, and the reason it was, something was happening that was not natural. And but a battery of tests, and months later, it's only literally in the last week I've had a solution, well, a diagnosis and a solution, and you think, wow, that took months. And what you're describing there, from all the tests and tools that can be fed into an AI, and a doctor is time limited. They can only deal with certain amounts of patients. They can only analyze so many cases on a day-by-day basis. And so there has to be a prioritization, but the AI could really, as you're saying, speed that up quite dramatically.
Exactly. And I mean, if we look at NHS wait times at the moment, they're only increasing. Paramedics are stressed because they can't get to patients. I'm not saying AI is the solution, but I think it could definitely help in assessing patients and making sure they receive the right treatment. Because issues happen in medicine. We know certain cases where people haven't received the right care, and there may have been long-term implications. With AI as a system, at the moment, it's more of a backup to that doctor to say, look, this could be a problem. And it does give that guidance to consultants and surgeons to say, okay, based on these inputs, the system has detected this as the problem, and we can do these actions to potentially save this person's life.
And when you think about that, you can commercialize that. You can put that into business consultancy, management consultancy. You could even use it with, smart technologies. So, for instance, we know now that, for instance, Internet of Things and the idea of software as a service and the project service boundaries collapsing in on each other, that manufactured machines need to be intelligent. So, for instance, the example I like the most is Rolls-Royce's jet engines, where not only do they now build the jet engine, but the jet engine communicates its service status to ground staff so that when the plane lands, they know exactly, okay, what kind of servicing does this need? So imagine there was an AI behind that as well, really understanding the complexity of the engineering, what the sensors are telling it, and reading it from so many different areas. The potential just to solve safety concerns, I think, would be massive. So yeah, that's really interesting.
I mean, I definitely agree. There's definitely so many implications that could happen for AI that we don't even know it could apply to at the moment.
Because it's still a nascent technology, isn't it? It's still quite young, so we're only really, scratching the surface of what it could do.
Exactly. I mean, if you think about 10 years ago, no one knew or even cared about driverless cars. They didn't care about different technology that could have worldwide implications that are going to ultimately change how we live.
Well, I mean, that's a great point, because I was thinking recently about how, if I have a driverless car and I'm not driving, the car is driving, what does that mean for car insurance? So I'm like, myself, you insure yourself as a driver fundamentally. And so, if the car is piloting itself, then where's the liability? Where does the insurance sit? And then
exactly.
again, AI could even help then to detect, well, this person is low risk on insurance because of factors X, Y, Z, which is better than just an algorithm.
Exactly. I mean, AI has implications there, from actuary then to actually driverless cars to saving people's lives. And I mean, it's again about that branch where different stems of capabilities are going to stem from previous advancements in tech.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, with this in mind, let me go to my final question then, which is, what do you see as the future of this tech for entrepreneurs and businesses? And do you think are there any major breakthroughs that you believe will happen soon, or we will see soon?
Yeah. So in terms of major breakthroughs, one thing I'm really passionate about is space technology. So I studied aerospace engineering at university, and it's because I kind of love everything to do with rockets, orbit, and eventually commercial spaceflight. One major breakthrough I definitely personally believe will be in things like low Earth orbit and actual applications for space tech. I think at the moment there's a massive problem with space debris in low Earth and how its orbit is affecting rockets from actually maneuvering themselves. So artificial intelligence is currently detecting what rotations and what gravity objects are being affected by, and how their orbit may affect different things from taking off. So I think looking forward to that sort of level of advancement is going to be applicable for artificial intelligence.
Actually, if I was to play with that idea, the first thing that comes into my mind is airplanes in the air. There's even talk of a car that will fly itself. So, with air traffic control is so subject to the human being. I can imagine there being lots of applications in just maneuvering things safely. I can even see artificial intelligence affecting logistics. The planning of logistic routes and delivery routes. It's a similar kind of idea, tracking objects in real time and being able to have the sheer power to process all that information.
Exactly. And it's optimizing so many day-to-day activities that we just haven't even thought about could be more efficient. So if we look at shipping lanes, for example, and how ships transport cargo, artificial intelligence can actually, like you were saying, link back to logistics and say these are the optimal routes based on what the weather is today, or these are what the wave patterns are. If a boat travels X route, it will save Y amount of fuel. And then linking back to sustainability and carbon emissions, it's trying to say what is that least or harmful way that logistics can happen.
That's just such a fascinating, idea. So, Anuj, I cannot thank you enough for giving me your time and for being a guest. That was absolutely so fascinating to just talk about, this new technology, what it can mean for entrepreneurs and businesses, and some of the breakthroughs that have been made. It really opens my eyes for sure for just the sheer scale of applications. But also, I think that my biggest takeaway, I would say, from this conversation is AI is really a big opportunity. I don't see it as a threat per se, but instead I think of it as there are so many business opportunities around AI to do things differently that there's plenty of opportunities there for the entrepreneurially minded to capitalize on.
Absolutely. I mean, AI, in my opinion, will be running the world soon.
We could get rid of some politicians.
Maybe bring it into some policies. That would be a good idea.
You never know. Well, Anuj, thank you so much. I wish you the very best of luck with your business ventures, and I have no doubt you're going to become a very well-known name in the tech sphere with I mean, your achievements speak for themselves. Your knowledge is incredible. So thank you so much for being my guest.
No, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's been an amazing conversation with you, and even likewise, I've learned so much as well from you.
Great. No, thank you so much. Take care.
And you.